And of course, for the first round of this year's Australian Touring Car Championship, a rolling start as per the rounds of the World Touring Car Championship. And as viewers have seen in Europe, for the past few years, the European Touring Car Championship. Our Park Royal pole sitter is Jimmy Richards. Sharing the front row with him, Dickie Johnson of Queensland. The V8 boys have it all to do, but keep an eye on Alan Grice starting out of the third row on the outside of George Fury. Grice is a notorious quick starter in rolling starts. They're holding the pace down of the cars, pace car on the circuit at the moment. 60 laps the distance for round one. Shell providing $275,000 in prize money for the National Touring Car title. And a great turnout of new equipment. The Ford Cosworth Sierra and, of course, the BMW M3, both having their world debut in touring car racing here today. They swing out of the top corner. The pace car is off the circuit, waiting for the lights to turn to green. And head-to-head go the Cosworth Sierras and the M3 BMWs. The Calder from Calder, the Shell Ultra Championship is underway. And Dickie Johnson pulling up on the inside and sweeping down the outside is Alan Grice. Look at the V8 horsepower coming into play. All being gobbled up here. And Perkins down the outside and takes Richards. Glenn Seton, I'm sorry, down on the inside, but goes straight off the circuit. Perkins goes straight off. Glenn Seton made a good start too. Grice is in amongst them, but Richards will lead it. Coming up into Shell Ultra corner. Seton in second spot, then back to George Fury in third. Alan Grice is up to fourth, and Dickie Johnson, he's still in there, but he's dropped off the pace.
Well, what an extraordinary start. Larry Perkins went in very, very deep at this 2.3-litre fuel-injected BMW in its world racing debut, leads the field at the end of the back straight. Glenn Seton in second place in the Turbo Skyline Car 15, then George Fury in third. Alan Grice in fourth position, and there's plenty of jostling. Peter Brock looks to be thrusting his way through the field as well in the mobile car. Fury goes out wide in the grass. He's in strife. Tony Longhurst is in there as well, giving everybody a serve. This is electrifying stuff on lap one.
Across the line, and it's Jimmy Richards with Glenn Seton coming up on the outside of him as they race it side by side down here. And it's Seton now who takes over the lead as they drop into the right-hander at Coca-Cola corner. Grice is still third. An electrifying start from Peter Brock. He has come from nowhere, and I think at this stage up round about fourth.
Had a lot of problems trying to get their car set up because of the lack of time, but Brock is moving through the field, and everybody is thoroughly surprised at the performance of this new M3 BMW. Jim Richards, a splendid job. Graham Crosby there. George Fury, surprisingly, a long way back. Dick Johnson lurking in about 7th or 8th, and he's the guy that really got shoved back through the field, and Crosby in strife, is it? Graham Crosby has gone round in car 8. How did they miss him?
Well, he's backed out of there, but he's looped the model in front of the field, trying to keep it running. And we'll start again. The rest of the tail, it is Tony Noski there in the Kalari transport car going through, and Crosby back on the pace. Seton across the strike from Jimmy Richards, Alan Grice. Peter Brock will keep an eye on him. He's got a lot to prove here today at Calder Park in this opening round of the Shell Championship.
The last time that Glenn Seton was down here was for the endurance round late last year in November. You recall that he and George Fury did a splendid job, and at this corresponding round last year, Glenn Seton actually led it for a while. This could potentially be a Touring Car Championship season opener win for young Glenn Seton. He's doing a great job. Richards right behind, then Grice sitting in nicely in the V8 Commodore. Then Brock, then Tony Longhurst, George Fury, and Gary Scott, the next man.
Coming down to the bottom corner, remember a lap ago here, there was all sorts of problems for Graham Crosby. We'll catch the action for you, courtesy of Shell Ultra on our replay, and boy, he got that sucker sitting up on two wheels and parked it almost in front of the field.
Well, that's where Fury ended up one out and one wide. That's why he lost so much time.
Johnson was coming through, and look at the move there.
Andrew Medicki was the other man involved in the OXO Cosworth Sierra. Dick Johnson, Greg Hansford having to go every which way to get around the spinning Bob Jane T-Marks Commodore. And surprisingly, everybody gets out of that one without swapping paint. Back to the leader, Glenn Seton, car 15. Lap 3.
Seton's still leading, but let's have a look out for second place, man. Grice I saw moving up a moment or two ago, and these little Nissans really move, don't they? They're incredibly quick in a straight line. They've got no aerofoils, no wings on them to slow the cars down, to give them more downforce, so they're much quicker in a straight line. And Grice is second, but he's got a real battle on his hands there with Richards.
Brock's the
Peter
mover.
Brock. Here's Brock making a run down on the outside as Grice just locks up a brake, going into Shell turn.
This is the car that Graham Cameron drove in the Nissan Mobile Series, and they had so many problems with the car, all sorts of knocks.
He comes back onto the start-finishing straight, and it goes across the line. So it is Seton leading from Alan Grice. Next is car number 3, Jimmy Richards, and he is being swamped by Peter Perfect in 05, the Mobile Team Commodore.
Last year, Grice, he appeared in Europe. Oh, and look at Richards there on the inside of Brock. Brock trying to go around the outside of him. It's not to be, though. That's where the M3 really scores. It handles so well.
Brock just locking up an inside front that time as he went through the kink over towards the Bob Jane Hill and making a run down the back straight.
And Fury right up with them there too.
Here comes Brock. Pulls out of the slipstream as they come down the back straight. Fury keeping them up. And he dives down on the inside of Tony Longhurst. So a great scrap going here, and all the time this is going on, of course, Glenn Seton is able to pull away from the field.
Well, he's doing a great job. He's driving the newest of all of the cars that the Peter Jackson Nissan team have built. They've been swapping and changing cars, trying to develop the fastest combination, and George Fury has ultimately gone back into his oldest car, Grice. Richards and Brock having a great scrap, former teammates. Then George Fury buys into the action. Look at the speed of the Nissan down the outside. And George Fury, the old rally champion, really puts up a strong performance as he tries to round them up, but he's out on the wrong side of the circuit. Can Richards squeeze through?
He's going to think about it. Oh, over the curb. Richards caught out wide, and Longhurst have been swamped. Black in a moment, they said. Brocky, 05. Keeping in mind that...
Oh, the BMW really tailing that time through the kink in the back straight. Richard still has the upper hand of the two black BMWs, and George Fury sweating it out as he tries to do something about Peter Brock. Looks in his mirror, he realises what's going on, and all the time Glenn Seton getting away in car number 15. Seton opening a gap on the field. Now 3.4 seconds, back to Alan Grice, Peter Brock, then George Fury. Gary Scott buying into the action here as well. Splits the two BMWs in car number 6 in his first drive for the Mobile dealer team. And the Queenslander, who was ousted from the Nissan team at the end of 1986, is also working his way through the field.
He has done a good job. Here they come, heading up T-Mart's Hill. Gary Scott. Could be just a one drive, or maybe a backup next weekend. Simmons Plains, the big Australian national line meeting down there.
And Larry Perkins is recovering as well. Andrew Medicki, the next man in the Oxo Sierra Cosworth. And then Dick Johnson behind him. Boy, there's some action on that circuit at the moment. 2.4 kilometres, and all around it, these guys are going hammer and tong in the opening round of the 9-round series this year.
Look at this though. Teammates, Jim Richards in number 3 and Tony Longhurst in 4. And Perkins all over. Comes down the inside, does Larry Perkins. Looked like he would lead the race into the first corner, but he got shuffled off, went in far too wide, and he's working away now on the inside of Jum as they go down to the right-hander at Coca-Cola. So Jimmy Richards doing a great job, and Jim Richards, a very interesting driver, courtesy of Nissan. Nissan know how, you betcha they do. Jimmy Richards, 39 years of age, comes from Melbourne. Of course, lead driver for the JPS BMW team. New Zealand Touring Car Champion 70 and 71. James Hardy, 1000 co-victor in 78, 79 and 80. And of course, the Touring Car Championship in 85 speaks for itself, 7 out of 10. He's been racing for 22 years and feeling the pressure at the moment with Larry Perkins all over him.
Well, one guy caught up in the action there, and the little Gemini knows what it's all about at the moment. He's going to have to watch his mirrors. Gary Scott has moved through. What a great battle for the minor placings in this race, but still Glenn Seton has control. Perkins now right in behind Scott. Has a brave look on the inside. Pokes his nose through, and Larry Perkins in the Giltrap-owned Holden Commodore The man that did so well in the second round of the Nissan Mobile Series in New Zealand goes through. Gary Scott makes a mistake. Jim Richards takes his position away from him. And look at this battle between Peter Brock and George Fury. Fury, the runner-up in last year's Touring Car Championship, has been runner-up before. This year he wants the title. He's got a fight on his hands at the moment.
Brock having a look in the mirrors that time, covered his tracks beautifully as they went down to Shell Turn, heading down now to Glowweave, the right-hander. Seton, meantime, is continuing to lead the field and lead it comfortably.
Our viewers would have expected to have seen the new VL Commodore making its world racing debut this weekend in the hands of Peter Brock. That couldn't happen. He had to sell the car at the end of last week because of problems with his operation, as we well know. He's running the VK car that gave him a win in Wellington, and now battling with George Fury, who's on the outside in the turbo Nissan. The two of them almost identical in straight line speed, but Fury, extremely brave under brakes, has a prod on the inside.
Goes through there. Brock throwing everything into this and moving around in the cockpit of the car too. Swings up Team Art Hill over the crest. Comes down towards our next camera and swings onto the back straight. Brock using all of the racetrack. He's running third on the road at the moment. Glenn Seton still leading from Alan Grice, Brocky, then of course George Fury. And Fury trying to find out how quick, in fact, the Commodore will be in the opening rounds of the touring car title, because he's got plenty of pressure on Peter Brock at the moment. Now watch him duck for the inside if he can get the line down here, but Brock has been closing the gate on him and making him run the outside on him.
This is going to be an interesting battle, and look in the background there, there's another half dozen cars getting stuck into it. So there's Grice in second position, Brock third, Fury on the outside of him. The Nissan perhaps marginally better under brakes, a little lighter. A very wide entry line into this corner will put Fury in a nice position as he makes an exit run. The torque of the V8 Commodore certainly functioning very nicely.
All the time, Brock and Fury, of course, are getting closer to Grice.
Yes, they're roping Grice back in, and Grice really hasn't had anyone to challenge at this stage. They move down the back straight. George this time pulls to the outside. Perkins still hovering in the background now. George looks down on the inside. They both waft around a little under brakes there. A great scrap this.
Now, can Brock's tyres survive this kind of punishment for 60 laps?
Working hard at the wheel. Clips the curb going in. Will try and get out and get back across to the right and hold the inside protection line for the next turn. They're coming up on one of the Toyotas.
Look at the battle for 6th position. Gary Scott with his hands full. Andrew Medicki in car number 35. Jim Richards making the best of his opportunities. And mixed in for good measure, Tony Longhurst in car number 4. What a fantastic battle for this opening round.
Yes, the racing has been splendid. And right behind them, Dickie Johnson, and up ahead of them, the battle just rages with George Fury and Peter Brock. Trying to cover it all for you on 7 Sport, bringing you the action from Calder Park Raceway.
Information through that Larry Perkins is the fastest man on the circuit at the moment with a 61.61 lap time, and that was as at the first 10 laps. Dick Johnson, car number 17 in the Shell Ultra High Ford Sierra Cosworth Turbo, a car still with a lot of development left in it. Got it up onto the front row yesterday in slimy conditions, and these are the cars to watch this season. The man in front of him also doing very well in a similar type of car is Port Macquarie's Andrew Medicki, running in the OXO team colours this season. World racing debut for the Cosworth.
And I think Dickie Johnson got taken a bit by surprise by the rolling start. He was saying before the race, in fact, that he'd much prefer it to be a standing start as he finds his way past one of those Geminis there, getting in the dirt.
Look at this for a scrap. It's continuing. Peter Brock holding down third on the road. Here comes the Tal Malmo farmer, Georgie Fury, and the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, and Larry Perkins coming down on the inside of him, and Lightning Larry just storms past. Comes down on the outside of Brock. This is where he went off before. Dabs the brakes as he goes in, takes Fury. As they come out, it'll be Larry Perkins in the NZ Connectors Commodore, number 11. Keeping in mind, Larry and Denny Holm won the second round of the Nissan Mobile 500 series at Pukekohe in New Zealand. And Peter Perfect now has another Commodore right behind him. Former team driver, Larry Perkins.
Perkins is really operating, as you said. This man is the former chief engineer for the Holden dealer team. He was ousted in a rather nasty debate between his management and himself, and he wants to do something about trouncing the dealer team this weekend. Peter Brock looking in his mirror, and Larry Perkins, as I said before, the fastest man on the circuit. having come back from the off on the first corner.
Here he comes, down on the inside as they come out of the corner. Boy, that was tight. I'll go across the line and see if Perkins has got the grunt and the NZ Connectors Commodore. It's horsepower coming into play. Who's got the fastest of the V8s? Perkins goes up. Now Brock down the inside of him. Farmer Fury wanting to hoe into the pair of them. Down to the right-hander. Coca-Cola corner. Perkins gets through. He now takes over second. Grice is over third, I should say. Grice holding second. And, of course, Glenn Seton continues to lead the race. The right-hander on the approach to Bob Jane T-Mart's Hill. Good drive this from Perkins.
This is a fantastic drive from the man who did so well in that second round of the Nissan Mobile Series, and in theory was going to do very well in the opening round before his co-driver of the day, David Parsons, got into strife. And obviously the hard charger of the Commodore Brigade at the moment. They're still following Alan Grice though. He's got his car set up well. A little telltale there from Peter Brock. The back of his car starting to slide around just a little.
Perkins, of course, did a lot of testing, didn't he, over the summer, out of season. A lot of testing, and it's really paying off now, I think.
And it was all done here, and he spent a lot of time with this car.
Well, you can't knock a country boy back. Here comes George again. Coming down on the outside of Peter Brock. I'm quite surprised. Yes, straight down this time.
It's a long way.
Oh, but does it? Oh, Brock goes in. Tap the brakes on the way in, almost locked the front wheel up. But George Fury, that nimble little Nissan.
Well, that was just sheer great driving from George Fury. Went in wide, had to really get across the bows of Peter Brock and did it. And got away with it. And now, after being embroiled in this battle for the last 17 laps, has finally pulled clear of the mobile car and can get on with the job. Bits and pieces of plastic coming away there from the front left-hand corner of Brock's car.
Wouldn't have thought you would have seen plastic on Brock's car. Coming into the right-hander. Car number 30, Georgie Fury, floats it out wide. George's race is far from over. Now he has a bit of a break and time to catch up on Alan Grice. George Fury, of course, the man who won more races, courtesy of Nissan know-how, and he's driving the right product. 42 years of age. He's a farmer. Comes from Tal Malmo in New South Wales and drives the Nissan Skyline. First in the 77-79 Australian Rally Championship. Fourth in the World Rally Championship round in New Zealand. 12th in the Australian Touring 82 Australian Touring Car Championship. Second in 83. 11th in 84. Second in 86. And what a win record last year. One of the nice guys of the sport. Another profile courtesy of Nissan know-how.
Right behind Larry Perkins as he enters the braking area in the back straight. Brock getting just a little closer again to the back of the Nissan. Might be interesting to take a look at the gaps between the lead contenders whilst we're looking at this battle back in the pack, and Glenn Seton is the leader on the Castrol GDX race splits. 4.5 seconds up his sleeve from Alan Grice, who's got 1.89 seconds over Larry Perkins.
Well, everything running very smoothly for Glenn Seton. Last year, of course, you'll remember that the Nissan team had the services of Gary Scott of Queensland. They've settled for their two drivers for 1987. Obviously, George Fury in car number 30 and Glenn Seton in the PJ15 car. And their faith in young Seton is certainly...
And George is filthy on that one. That's Laurie Nelson in the V8 Mustang, awkwardly getting in the way. He can't really help it because Brock has made the best of this opportunity. Look at him on the outside. Laurie really had nowhere to go through that chicane.
It's a case of watching the mirrors. And there is a great gap between the fast cars here today and the slow cars, make no mistake.
Fury using a Dunlop radial tyre, medium compound, and Brock, of course, using the Bridgestone tyres on the Commodore. And if anything, once he drops out of the slipstream at the back of the Nissan Skyline, he's going to have problems tailing him down this very long straight.
From Australia today, an important venue for the opening round of the National Touring Car title because of the debut of the M3 and, of course, the Cosworth Sierra. It gets a lot of favourable reaction in the UK. Your impression so far, Richard?
Well, the M3 is certainly in practice, was that the car, and of course I think the fact that it's a handling car and it handles so well has been brought out by the wet practice session. Now it's dry. The fact that it's only 2.3 litres is really rather letting it down, and unfortunately it's not able to stay with the big V8s and the turbo Nissans.
And this, of course, is a circuit that should suit the M3 to get onto some of the real speed courses. This is a tight little rink compared to some of the others like Sandown. Alan Grice running second on the road at the moment, behind Glenn Seton. And Grice, of course, one of our favourite race cam operators. How's it doing out there, Alan?
Pretty busy, Mike. Pretty hot.
It is a bit warm, but at least you've got a dry track. Is that to your advantage?
Yeah, it is, as long as Bondi stops throwing mud at me.
Gricey, how are your tyres holding out?
Just starting to get a bit squeezy now, but so's the Nissan in front. Just a moment, I'm walking a bit of a tightrope on brake balance. This place is hard on brakes. I'm just starting to get the rears locking up, but I don't want to take too much off the rear and put it on the front.
Yeah, what you're talking about is the brake balance bar at the front of the car.
Yeah, exactly that, Mike. It's very, very difficult to get exactly right all the time, but that's what they pay me for.
Your impressions, you've driven a few circuits over the last couple of years. The tiny Calder rink, how does it rate?
Well, it's so much better than it used to be, but it's still a little bit short, particularly for my sort of car. But it's the same for all of us. This is going to be interesting. He did.
He's not looking.
Oh, he's doing his best.
Grice, you have mellowed.
Oh, shucks. You're just being nice.
I know.
I got a bit of a carburetor hiccup there too. Can you hear that?
Yeah, we're just coming out of the corner.
Yeah, it says the secondary's open on the carburetor, and if I get it all right, the corner all right, I can just go flat on the accelerator.
What are you pulling in top down the straight?
Well, I'm pulling 7 through the gears and about 6.2, 6.3. See the back of the car move around then. That's because I'm prepared to cop that, because at this early stage of the race, I don't want to put too much effort on my front. If there's going to be a charge on towards the end of the race, I want to have good front brakes to do it.
I just noticed something then. When you crest the top of the hill, you have to have a little lift to stop the thing from over-revving.
Yeah, that's right.
Perhaps you'd like to talk our viewers around a lap of Calder Park.
This is all second gear. Actually, I think the risk of being a bit of a party pooper, I better get a bit serious, Mike. I can see Perkins coming up on me behind.
All right, I might allow you to get back onto it and not interfere with your concentration. We'll check back with you later when the pressure's off a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, mate. Alan Grice still running second on the road behind Glenn Seton, but closing on him is Larry Perkins, who seems to be coming from nowhere in this field today in the NZ Connectors Commodore. Into the right-hander. Just a tiny lock up there, heading up T-Mart Hill again. Grice driving the car that, of course, that carried him to victory in the James Hardy 1000.
Lap 26 of 60, round 1 of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship. This is the battle for second. And Larry Perkins closing all the time on Alan Grice as they come down the long Calder Park front straight. Glenn Seton a long way off in the distance at this stage, so it's a battle of the V8s for second and third. And Alan Grice is really going to have to work now and concentrate in keeping Larry Perkins out. Remember that Perkins is the man that has the fastest lap of the circuit so far and has come back from that remarkable off on lap 1.
She's done an incredible job in the NZ Connectors Commodore. Going to make life difficult in the next couple of laps for Alan Grice. But if Grice has got a problem or two with tyres going off, Larry would be feeling the pinch equally, I would feel. Peter Brock has made his charge and has now settled back. George Fury sitting back behind these two cars. Down towards Glowweave Corner. We'll have two angles of the challenge by Larry Perkins on Alan Grice. Cameras around the circuit. And of course, race cam as well as he gets closer and sits in the draft. And there it is as I speak. Dave Thomas and our race cam boys down here today.
Larry getting closer. His best lap time is 61.61. Alan's best time so far is 62.14. That tells something of the story.
Getting close now. Up into the right hand and then the drag up T Mart's Hill. Grice will fight for it.
I made a blue early on saying that this was the Graham Cameron car. This car that Alan's driving is the car that gave him victory in last year's James Hardy 1000, and in an arrangement with Graham Bailey from Gosford will run the car for season 87. Great shot from race cam as we look at Larry Perkins, white knuckle fever and wide eyes looking through the back of Alan Grice's Commodore.
They come out of Glowweave Corner. Grice there. Perkins getting very close to him as they run down the straight. Be able to tell now where horsepower comes into play on the drag to the right-hander at the end of the straight. Perkins setting up, and here he goes, swings out down the inside, and Perkins in car number 11 takes Grice down into the braking area.
Grice takes a wide entry now, figuring that he might be able to get an advantage on the inside as he comes out, but it doesn't seem to be working for anybody who's tried that today. And Perkins just seems to have that slight advantage with pace. Now that can come from two things. It can either be horsepower or just sheer cornering and handling ability with his car, which comes back to the way that he's set it up and the tyres that he's using. If he's coming out of corners quicker, stands to reason that he's quicker down the straight.
I think it's likely to be a combination of both, to be quite honest. The speed that he's going down the straight and the way that he passed Brock's car and Grice's car, the car has got to be quicker in a straight line.
Larry Perkins, car number 11. Courtesy of Nissan Know-How. Stats, of course, on Larry Perkins. 36 years of age, from Melbourne, driving the NZ Connectors Commodore. First in the James Hardy 82, 83, 84. First in the Formula 4 driver to Europe back in 71. First in the 72 Australian Formula 2 Championship. And first in the Australian Rallycross Championship. A versatile lad is Lightning Larry.
Well, he's done a fine job to round up Alan Grice, and he did it very nicely without any problems. And he can now concentrate on the job of working away the back of the lead Nissan. It's going to be a fairly tall order. Glenn Seton getting towards the braking area of the back straight. I'll give you some indication of that gap. And it is 5.5 seconds. Lap 30 of 60 laps. Halfway through this first round of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship. Next weekend, the action comes to you from Symonds Plains in Tasmania near Launceston. And it's likely that anything can happen down there on a completely different type of circuit. Alan Grice told us before on Seven's Race Cam, this is a circuit hard on V8s. Hard because these cars weigh 1,325 kilograms. Right at the moment, they're doing 250 kilometres an hour, and they have to pull them up to a second gear right-hander at the bottom. And if there's anything these cars hate, it's abuse of tyres. The Nissans are making the most of that situation at the moment.
So race leader, Glenn Seton in car number 15. Doing a great job for the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline team here today. Coming down the back straight, holding that strong advantage that he's held since the opening lap. He probably has nightmares of that particular corner. Keeping in mind he led the race last year, corresponding fixture, and looped the car, hit his oil slick patch down there, looped the car, and but then made another remarkable recovery to come back through the field and finish second to Georgie Fury, his teammate. Glenn Seton.
So behind the three that we've been following, George Fury now in a comfortable fourth position, followed by Brock, then Jim Richards, Andrew Medicki, Tony Longhurst, and then Dick Johnson. And the gap is closing. between Seton and Perkins. We've got a race on our hands, that's for sure.
Richard, you haven't seen the Nissan Skylines in Europe as yet. Look like they'll make a big contribution to the World Touring Car Championship, judging by the form here today. You've seen them at Bathurst and, of course, how strongly they went at the Nissan Mobile Series in New Zealand.
They strongly resemble the Volvo in terms of handling, I think, and power output. Where they score over the Volvos, of course, is that the car slips through the air a lot more easily, and so it's a lot quicker in a straight line.
The interesting thing that we were discussing earlier today, Richard, about these cars is that they don't have that great downforce that perhaps the other cars have. And whilst that works in their favour at a circuit like perhaps Calder, when we cast our minds back to last October at the James Hardy, you'll remember how unstable they were across the top of the mountain, and that's something that George was telling us yesterday is a bit of a worry with these cars at this stage.
It is a problem, but then again, when you've got an engine that is perhaps a little bit limited on horsepower, which the Nissan engine is, it's not giving as much power as, say, the big V8s and so on. It would be a disadvantage, I think, to be losing that much speed on the straights at the moment. Obviously, as the car has developed through the years and it's got some sort of future ahead of it, I think, they'll add wings and aerodynamic devices to hold the car down on the road.
Well, car number 15, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. And in the pits after a valiant try today, Peter Brock in 0.5 really gave it everything, but smoke was pouring out of the car. As Pete says, I gave it my best shot, but obviously an engine problem there. It was starting to emit a lot of blue smoke in the last half lap, and he's just coasted it into the pit area.
It's not been his week, really, has it?
No, not really. Mick Webb, the team manager on the other side of the car, mechanics consulting with but a very relaxed Peter Brock. He knows what it's like to win, and he knows also what it's like, the heartache of giving it your best shot and then having to pull into the pits.
He put up a very, very good performance earlier on, in fact. The way that he came through the field from the start was just amazing. And then moved up very comfortably up the rest of the field, up to 4th place where he was running. And had a good battle with Georgie Fury as well.
Talking about good battles, car number 17 is Dick Johnson in the Shell Ultra High Ford Cosworth Sierra. And of course, trying out for us today our new mini race cam that you'll be able to see pictures of the international touring car events. There's Dick with the small little unit just perched over his shoulder. And a new feeling for Dick. Got the front row, but got shuffled back in that almighty charge to the first right-hander. But the one consolation is the car will be as strong at the finish of the race as it was at the start.
I reckon he might be a bit disappointed with the way things are going at the moment, but time will tell. I mean, we're only just a little over halfway, coming up towards 2/3 of the way through the race, and if the tyres and so on are in good shape towards the end, he could well come through and pick up some more places yet. Sierra Cosworth makes that wispy noise from the 16-valve engine with the turbocharger tagged onto it. Takes all the rort out of the engine noise. And you notice the difference between Grice and Johnson there. Johnson much more smooth.
So Dickie Johnson continues running about 8th in the field at this moment. There's our race leader, Glenn Seton, in car number 15, but as you can see, closing right up behind him is Larry Perkins in car number 11, the NZ Connectors Commodore. And Larry has just sprung from nowhere, stormed through the traffic after looking so good in the first corner, but he's also been able to pick up the other challenges in the race as well. I refer to Alan Grice and of course George Fury, so they've closed this one up appreciably.
Well, after watching Perkins in practice, this doesn't come quite as much of a surprise as it might be. All the testing and so on that he's put in is obviously paying off now, and when I was asked earlier on about it, I thought that he'd be the man for the race.
Okay, let's go down to the pits. Neil Crompton.
Thanks very much, Mike. Well, the situation, of course, you saw Peter Brock coming to the pit area in the 05 Mobile Dealer Team car. He had some problems during the week that we all know about, and he came from a long way back on the grid. And Brocky, you carved them up in the early stint, but unfortunately things went wrong towards the end.
Yeah, Very happy off the grid. I was having a ball there for a few laps, but the new experimental Bridgestones we're using weren't quite right. We had no chance of testing them. They've got new ones on the way. I'm quite sure they'll be great. But that was going for it. I revved it up extremely high, and well, it certainly something was very much amiss there before.
What's let go? Any idea?
No idea. I think it'd be the top end of the motor. I don't think it's a lubrication problem.
Do we expect to see you at Simmons next weekend?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. And I hope Gary and I will both be down there. We'll both be a lot wiser because of this experience this weekend. We know what compounds to run. We know, well, the cars were going pretty good, let's face it. Early on there, I was sort of being pretty close to the lead. I was pretty happy.
You said yesterday in the press conference that you were going to sit down and discuss Gary's future last night. Did you do that, and have you come up with a future for him?
Yes, we have. We're planning that Gary will be down there on Thursday. Tyre testing, new tyres in from Bridgestones being dropped down to the workshop tomorrow. And we hope to really get to grips with the chassis development part of the car. We think we're on the right track. Obviously, our cars were, we can see how fast it was early in the race, really.
Okay, Pete, let you get back to it. Thanks for talking to us. Peter Brock out of round one of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship, but obviously at this stage, not a spent force, and we'll see him later. Mike.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, the race continues. Neville Crichton there in the white Sierra Cosworth, having a lap put on him by Glenn Seton in number 15, and right behind Seton is, of course, Larry Perkins. Once again, they take the bottom end of the circuit in through Coca-Cola Corner and now head up T-Mart Hill. Great maturity on the part of Glenn Seton, only 21 years of age. His dad, Bo Seton, of course, was a household name in touring car racing back some years ago. And Barry Seton, of course, doing all the engine work for the Peter Jackson Nissan team. Nothing like keeping it all in the family. He's raised a good offspring, I'll tell you that. The kid is a very, very good driver. Very underrated last year. He wound up tapping a couple of cars. And, of course, everyone blamed the youngster. He's matured tremendously. Let's take a look at the Castrol GTX2 race splits to give you an idea of the times. Glenn Seton is your race leader for Peter Jackson Nissan. 1.42 seconds clear of Larry Perkins in the Commodore. The further 5.68 seconds back to George Fury. They've already put a lap on one of the M3s, so it's all closing up rather dramatically. T-Mart Hill again. Perkins still stalking the 15 car.
He'd be happy to sit there now, I would think, for a minute or two now. He's that close to the leader. Allow everything to cool down, allow himself to cool down, because I should think he was fairly angry with himself earlier on after that mistake on the first lap. And he'll cool down a little bit, I should think, and wait for an opportunity rather than make one.
Well, of course, yesterday's practice showed us that that we had a situation of two new cars, the Sierra Cosworth Turbo and, of course, the BMW M3 sharing the front row with a dry racetrack today and a bit of horsepower getting down on the road. The grunt cars are back. Nothing can beat something with a bit of horsepower, and of course one that does bring out a lot of horsepower is that Turbo Nissan. The Commodores, and particularly Perkins, has been outstanding today. Still plenty of heart though for Dick Johnson and for Jimmy Richards. And this is the only race, of course, that these guys have had on local soil, the top runners. Meeting a couple of weeks ago at Oran Park for the Tourers. But you'll notice Larry Perkins, after doing so much development work here at Calder and running the Nissan Mobile Series in New Zealand, is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Shell Ultra Series in '87.
Is he indeed? He's closed this gap dramatically. Right in behind Glenn Seton now, and I'm surprised that the condition of Larry's tyres is still such that he can challenge the Nissan quite comfortably. They've just completed 44 laps, 16 to go.
Well, of course, that's where the testing pays off. The fact that he's done so many miles, he knew exactly what compound to fit before the race started and exactly how long the tyres would last and what he could do with them.
He's a very gritty competitor, and good sponsorship backing this year. They built two cars last year. They have sold one. The other one is running today in the hands of Tony Noski, a former Speedway driver and Kalari Transport entry. And this is the fresh car that they took to New Zealand. They hope to have it back in time for Oran Park. They couldn't get it back off the boat from Pukekohe near Auckland. So this is the first run this year for the newer of their two VK Commodores. And Larry said yesterday in a conference that he'll stick with this car for some time before he upgrades to the VL. Something like $100,000 invested in building one of these cars, and they'll wait and see what sort of advantage is to be gained out of the new VL Commodore. Starting to slide just a little now as he comes out of Glowweed.
Keeping in mind our Motorsport on 7 continues. Next weekend, the second round of the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship, the big Australian National Line Carnival at Symonds Plains in Launceston. Big good afternoon to all our viewers watching us through Tasmania, throughout Australia, New Zealand, and of course with our Touring Car Championship packages going throughout Europe this year as well. Symonds Plains next week brings us also the ISIS Formula 2 Championship, and not to forget the Superbikes back in the Aussie Land Series as well. So more motor racing to come to you next weekend from Symonds Plains. Lap 47 of 60. Great Scott, they said a few seconds ago, as Gary Scott went off into the sand trap only about 10 or 15 seconds back. And this is how it happened. Caught on our Shell instant replay. Waltzing around, and it lets go. Right in front of Dick Johnson, squares up Johnson out of the harm's way and powers straight off into the sand trap. Full clip. Woo-hoo. This is the other Park Commodore. Does a bit of front end damage on the way through. So exit Gary Scott, exit Peter Brock. A little work to do for the mobile team. They'll be back at Symonds Plains next week.
One of the new cars making its Australian Touring Car Championship debut this weekend is the new Caltex entry, the Alpha 75 Turbo, being driven by former Australian Rally Champion, Touring Car Champion and Hardy winner Colin Bond. And Richard, you were saying earlier in the weekend when you first arrived from England that with development this is the car that you think is going to be the force to be reckoned with later in the year.
Well, they believe they can get 318 brake horsepower out of it, which is the same sort of power as the Nissan. The difference is that it can run lighter weight, and therefore I think that if they can make it reliable, which Colin Bond seems to have done, that car was never reliable in Europe at all when it was run by Luigi. It could well be the car to beat.
This car ran, I think, at Zolder briefly last year.
Very briefly, yeah,
very
about
briefly.
10 laps.
And it ran at Oran Park a few weeks ago, finishing second behind a Commodore, but they still haven't, as Bondi puts it, Australianised the car. He's still got quite a bit of work to do, and I think it's going to be a little goer. He's in 12th position at the moment, and with the new class structure this year, only two classes, under 2.5 litre, over 2.5 litre. This car should come into its own quite nicely. At the moment, it's still fairly heavy. It's still on the fat side. It's about 1,010 kilograms. The class minimum is 960. So one of the obvious ways to get some pace at the moment is to trim some weight out.
Well, of course, just about everything in touring car racing is towards small cars, lighter cars, more competitive cars for 87. Here's one of them. You expect to see this car far more competitive as each race goes by. It's the Shell Ultra Cosworth Sierra making its debut here today at Calder Park. Dickie Johnson screaming down the front straight, running 9th at the moment, and Dick Johnson, of course, hardly needs any introduction, courtesy of Nissan Know-How, 42 years of age. That makes him a veteran. From Brisbane, driving the Shell Ford Sierra. First in the Australian Touring Car Championship 81, 82, 84. Second in the 85 Touros. Sixth in 86. Of course, we'll all remember first in the shortened James Hardy 1000 back in 81. He plans to win at full distance this year. Gary Scott continues to lead. Opening round of the Australian Touring Car title, and here he is. Glenn Seton, I'm sorry, got my Scotts and my Setons. Those in the sands and those that have been trapped.
You take a look at the front of that car, I think he's had a bit of trouble with one or two of the back markers getting in his way.
There's certainly been a few of them lurking out there, and it brings up an issue that surfaces regularly in Australian motorsport. What do you do with the very small cars, the under 1.6 litre cars? And I guess you just have to be wary of the traffic. Everybody knows they're there. I think the guys with small cars do their very best sometimes, but if you're committed to a line, you just have to stay with it. But Glenn's done a great job so far to thread his way through difficult conditions and still got control of the race. And Larry Perkins is just inching closer all the time.
Yeah, I think he's just sitting there waiting. It's a lot easier to follow somebody and push them rather than take the lead. And at this stage of the race,
Lap 54 of 60, opening round of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. And of course, Glenn Seton in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, number 15, continues to lead. There's Seton just ahead of Dick Johnson, and sitting right in behind Dick Johnson at this stage is Larry Perkins, trying to stay in touch. And right behind Perkins is George Fury, coming in for a tight finish as they go across the line. They'll have 5 laps remaining.
Fury's the man that's moving at the moment. Larry's still attributed with having recorded the fastest lap of a 61.61, but George just recently improved his best time down to a 61.87. You could see a moment ago just how much he's closed that gap. And Glenn Seton, the man with pressure on him at the moment, he's doing a good job. We were discussing it in the break, and this will be a real test of his skill. Only 21 years of age, but been driving for a long time and coming up behind Tony Noski in the ex-Larry Perkins VK Holden Commodore, well-known speedway exponent. And
he's let them all rush by. Moves out to allow Glenn Seton through. Perkins still on the charge after a opening round race win at Calder Park today. Really, you couldn't fault Glenn Seton. He's driven superbly here. Fury still looming as a potential danger man, certainly for Larry Perkins, as lap after lap He just gets a little closer. Heading downhill to the right-hander at Coca-Cola.
One of the interesting things that I just checked was the lap record held at this circuit with touring cars, and George Fury's got it at a time of 60.91.
And that, of course, is about a second quicker than he's gone so far today, so maybe he's got something in reserve still.
Track conditions are a little different today, and temperatures play a very big role in the way these turbo cars perform, and that can always be weighed into account. But I am surprised that in 12 months that they're still circulating at around about the same time. But also remember that George had to fight very hard early on with a lot of traffic. And in fact, most of the guys didn't. There he is, front left-hand side of his car, looking a little worse for wear as well. And when your tyres are fresh and your fuel load is lightening, but you've got traffic around you, you obviously can't put in your optimum lap, and that's possibly what happened. They certainly won't be doing it right now.
So the order still Glenn Seton for the Peter Jackson Nissan team, Larry Perkins, NZ Fluid Connectors Commodore, and George Fury in car number 30, the second of the Skylines. And they are all on the same lap, separated only by probably a couple of seconds.
Glenn Seton's biggest worry at the moment, I would think, is going to be back markers. As he goes round there, anybody getting in his way is going to allow Perkins, of course, to close up on him. And that will be his biggest worry at the moment, I would think.
Well, Jimmy Richards displaying today great spirit in the opening laps after winning the Park Royal pole sitter spot yesterday. I think we can expect bigger and better things to come from the M3, perhaps a week from today at Simmons Plains.
In fact, Park Royal have also picked up some sponsorship with Larry Perkins for this season as well, so they've become involved in motorsport, which is good for us all. But I don't know whether or not we're going to get too much closer between these three guys. I think they've all got the rubber band stretched as tight as it'll go. Murray Carter there in the Everlast entry, car number 14. Same spec as the lead car, but about to lose a lap to the leader.
Hey, True Blue. A lorry up over the top of T-Mart's Hill.
They're on lap 58. There's about 1.5 to go. Larry will pull all the stops out now. A curious finish to this first round of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship. Certainly a great start for Nissan, no matter how the cards fall in this one. They've got two cars in the top three. And this year, with the Manufacturers' Championship being combined into the Australian Touring Car title, puts them in very good stead with their point score as a manufacturer.
It'll be interesting to see how these cars ran up against some of the European opposition, actually, and on some of the European circuits, which tend to be a lot longer and a little bit quicker than these.
Moving into the final lap, things looking good for Glenn Seton in car number 15, Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Through the right-hander, short straight for the next right. Now back to the left and up T-Mart Hill. We'll give you the gap, the visual gap now to Larry Perkins. No, Glenn has been able to consolidate his lead, comes out. He's got Carter just ahead of him. Slows him up just a titch as they come down to Shell Corner. So things coming up roses for the Peter Jackson Nissan team as Glenn Seton heads into the final corner. What a race to open the Australian Touring Car Championship for 1987. Nissan, car number 15, coming out of the last bend, across the line, takes the checkered flag. The win goes to Glenn Seton. Second spot will go to Larry Perkins. Third place to George Fury. Fourth place, in fact, will go to Alan Grice in car number 2. Well, first blood in the series to a 21-year-old who promised so much in '86 and has delivered first race of 1987.